Please welcome Dr. Celeste Paul.
Hello, everyone. My name is Celeste, and I'm from the National Security Agency. And today I want to talk about something that we've been starting a dialogue in the cybersecurity industry, and that is stress and burnout in our operators. Just a caveat, I am not a mental health professional. I am a cybersecurity researcher, much like many of you here. And I got into this topic because I saw the stress in our operators at NSA and wanted to do something about it. So if you're unfamiliar with the National Security Agency, we're a foreign intelligence agency in the Department of Defense, and we have two primary missions. Our first mission is our traditional signals intelligence mission, and that is where we intercept and exploit foreign signals, produce intelligence in order to support the warfighter and our congressmen. We also have the cybersecurity mission, which is where we prevent and eradicate threats to national security systems. So NSA cybersecurity leverages both sides. We utilize that foreign intelligence in order to secure our systems. And so you might be wondering why NSA cares so much about stress and cybersecurity. Well, we do a lot of cyber, and we also have a lot of professionals at the agency who are working in cybersecurity. And so we see a lot of the same things that you've seen in industry in terms of burnout and stress in everyday operations. So let's talk about stress. Stress is a physical and emotional reaction to adverse events. And it's not necessarily bad or good, it's just the way that our bodies react to surprises. We have good types of stress, which come from challenges or unexpected events. And sometimes this can be good because it gives us clarity and focus and challenges us and makes something more interesting. Bad type of stress is the type of stress that constantly wears on us. And especially when we don't have a lot of time to recover in between stressful events, that's where we start to feel the effects even more. Everybody experiences stress a little bit differently. We all have different levels of hardiness, which is the amount of stress that we can take on before it starts to affect us. And we have different levels of resiliency, which is how quickly we can recover from stress events to stress events. And our experiences with stress, whether it's good stress or bad stress, affect how we react to it. We tend to classify stress in 3 different degrees. The acute stress is the typical stress that you might feel. It's that and you start to sweat. Someone closing a door or popping a balloon, it's immediate reaction that you have, but you start to calm down as soon as the event goes away. Episodic stress is repetitive stress with little or no time to recover in between, and that's where you start to feel those long-term anxieties, that burn that you feel, where you feel like you don't really calm down completely. That's because you're not giving your body enough time to recover from that event. The worst degree of stress is chronic stress, and this is where you're in an enduring situation with no sense of control. And control is a common theme that I'll talk about throughout this talk. Stress can have profound effects on mental health. You have the physical effects, so I talked a little bit about increased heart rate and your body starting to sweat, especially if you have underlying health conditions. It can certainly aggravate them. It can also have effects on your mental health, both in terms of anxiety and depression. It can also have effects on your cognitive ability while you're doing the work while stressed. I mentioned that burnout and turnover is a major topic in cybersecurity, and stress contributes to that. I mentioned depression and anxiety. It can also lead to risky behavior in acute situations or even substance abuse. There are a number of risk factors that contribute to stress, or that stress can aggravate some of these things, and they're very individual. So different people have different levels of hardiness and resiliency to these factors, so it really depends on your own personal circumstances. These factors can be external to your work or internal to your work. So for example, if you have relationship problems, you could be fighting with your spouse, or if you could have internal relationship problems to your cybersecurity team where you're not really melding as a team and getting along very well. And there are a number of other factors. The commonality across all of these factors is that there's a lack of control, and that control is what eats away at your hope for being able to achieve happiness. And happiness is another theme that I'll talk about. Locus of control is our fancy psych term for describing the extent to which a person feels that they have control over the outcome in their lives. And this sense of control is really critical for well-being. So I'll step away from talking about stress and talk more about what we need to be happy, because these things are related. So some of you may be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's something that we sometimes talk about in high school psychology or college psychology, or sometimes you might see it in a business class. And these are things that we need in order to be happy and healthy individuals. We have our physiological needs, our safety needs, on top of that, love and belonging, our esteem, and also self-actualization. So, the pinnacle of our happiness. But not all of these needs are built the same. We have deficiency needs. There we go. Deficiency needs, which are our absolute minimum requirements. We can't think about anything else until these needs are met. If we're in poverty of any of these, they basically trump all other requirements. So if you don't have enough food and water, it's really difficult to think about fulfilling any type of safety need, let alone love and belonging, or any of our other level of needs. Once those deficiency needs are met, we can start working on our growth needs. And these are the needs that we need in order to be happy. And so these ones, we're constantly trying to achieve more and more. They're not basic requirements like our deficiency needs. Rather, they're things that we're constantly trying to achieve. And once we get to that level of self-actualization where we're able to have those peak experiences, that's where we reach our level of happiness. So let's talk about cyber. I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room that cyber is hard. It's extremely challenging, it's exciting, there's always something new. And those are a lot of the reasons why we are even in this industry. That's why we like doing cyber. It's exciting and fun, and we want the challenge. However, cyber is also complex. It's extremely unpredictable, and it's prone to failure. It's more than 15 years after Patch Tuesday was instantiated, but we still hold our breath and cross our fingers. That should tell us something. Cyber is an art, not a science, and it's most definitely not at an engineering level. That lack of predictability eats away at our sense of control. We're certainly working on making it more like an engineering discipline, but there's still so many things that are unpredictable due to the complexity of our environment. And that's contributing a lot to our stress. Cyber is also a very high-risk, high-reward environment. It's hard work, and there's equivalent stress to go with it. Some of these are the good types of stress. We like challenges. Challenges are fun. That's why we do it. The bad type of stress is that frustration from a lack of control due to all the things that make cyber so fun. So I mentioned that I'm from the NSA, and we're interested in stress. And a few years ago, my colleague and I did a study of stress in our tactical cyber operators. And so we looked at operations that were across 4 NSA locations. I think we studied 126 operators. This was 361 cyber operations. And it was no surprise to us, but also very interesting that we found that these operations were very stressful. But they had the good types of stress. They were stressful because they were challenging, and our operators were in that type of job because they were drawn to the challenge. However, there was also the bad type of stress. There was a lot of fatigue and frustration involved in these operations. What was interesting was that a lot of that frustration, a lot of that anxiety due to a lack of control came from external factors. So there were the normal, unpredictability things that happened in the operations, but they brought a lot of their anxiety from home or other aspects of their work into the operation, and that was inducing some level of stress as well. So case in point, this is an excerpt from one of the participants from our study. And this is how they went into the operation. This is before the operation. They were clearly very frustrated. Specifically, they were irritated, stressed, and annoyed at something, but it wasn't necessarily cyber yet. I am happy to report that their frustration level went down, way down after the operation, and they were successful in the operation. But this just goes to show how much we carry with us whenever we come into the environment to do our work. So this is a good example where they were successful and they were able to bring themselves back into themselves and recenter themselves. But is that necessarily the case every time we bring something into our work? Our environment is a little interesting and different as well, in the sense that our operators take on these really high-risk, high-reward operations. But they do that because they're committed to the mission. And in some ways, they take that almost to an extreme because they know what's at stake. They know that if they fail, there could be a risk of loss of life, property, or sovereignty. That's a really heavy responsibility to take on day to day, but they gladly do it because they're so committed to the mission. However, if cyber is so stressful and there's not much we can do about the unpredictability about that environment, what are some things that we can do to help people who work in this environment manage their stress if we can't necessarily remove it? So thinking back on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I started thinking about, well, what are some things that we need as hackers? What are our hacker hierarchy of needs? And we have a lot of the same things. We still have physiological needs. We still have safety needs and love and belonging. We still have these esteem needs and need or self-actualization in order to be happy. We also have those deficiency needs, or the things that we need to do our jobs. We need equipment, tools, and access. If we don't have those things, we can't start thinking about anything else. We don't care about the authorities or policy if we can't even, put our hands on a keyboard. Once we have those authorities and policies, do we have a team that supports us? Do we have an organization that supports us? That's just to do our jobs. We're not even at the level yet where we feel like we're fulfilled or doing what we think is right. Once we start getting into our esteem needs and self-actualization, this is where we can start talking about what we need to be happy. Reputation is something that's very important to us because, we're a meritocracy in some ways. All you have to do is spend a couple hours on Twitter to see that. However, it's building community in a positive way. Having a mission that you believe in, so we have that at NSA. Do your organizations have that? But that mission is really what's driving all of us to do the type of work that we do and to take on the risks that we do in order to achieve something greater than just ourselves. So I talked a bit about what is stress and why cybersecurity in particular is stressful. We explored a little bit about what our needs are, both as a human and also as a hacker. But what are some things that we can do in order to manage stress? I haven't gotten to solution space yet. How do we get from where we are now to where we want to be in the future? This is where hope comes in. Hope is the belief in your ability to control your circumstances. And it's a way of reclaiming control in an environment that is inherently complex and unpredictable. Hope is a really interesting construct that has a lot of, we think of it as a fuzzy term, but it's actually a very mature psychological construct. And hope is something that you can build in your organization and change the culture to help your people manage their stress better. To build hope in an organization, you have to have clear shared goals. And a way of having shared goals is to allow people to contribute to the building of those goals. taking input from the people who do the work, but then also giving them agency to affect those goals, helps them regain control in an environment that is inherently complex and unpredictable. Also, by valuing work-life balance, as an organization, you're showing the people who are doing the work for you, who are helping you achieve your goals, that you care about them. It also helps them manage all of that stress that they're bringing into their work so that they can do better work. Hope takes time. I mentioned culture a few times, and culture doesn't change overnight. It's something that's very important. It's something that you can do over time, but what's something that we can do now? What's something that takes less time to achieve because we're all stressed and we can't wait months or years in order to change our organizational culture? Mindfulness is a way of bringing attention to yourself and the present. And it's a really useful methodology for centering and managing stress. One technique in mindfulness that I really like is called 3 mindful breaths. And this is something that helps you calm your thoughts and come back into focus through breathing. It's also a really useful technique for calming your body through controlled physical movement. We tend to carry a lot of stress and a lot of tension in our body, and simply by taking a deep breath and letting it go, you release a lot of that tension and helps you come back into the present. Also, I really like this technique because I'm a scientist, and there's a lot of research that shows that mindfulness specifically has long-term effects on cognition and mental health. So not only are you going to perform better, you're just simply going to feel better. These are very easy to learn techniques. There are a lot of resources online, and there's other types of training or coaching that you can get, but it's still something that you need to practice. I actually didn't realize this right away because I practice yoga, and so I'm familiar with meditation and breathing techniques. But it took a friend in crisis for me to realize that not everybody has these skills already, and that we still need something that we can take back with us and use immediately. So this is where sensory centering comes in. And this is probably the most accessible technique that I know about. I like this technique because not only is it something that you can do for yourself right now, this is something that you can guide a colleague through right now. It's a very entry-level grounding technique. If you happen to stop by the NSA booth this week, you may have picked up one of these boxes and wondered what it was. It has the sensory centering technique on it. And really, you don't even have to go in order. What it does is it helps you focus on specific senses, and it helps reduce all of the noise that might be going on if you're in some type of spiraling crisis. What are 5 things that you can see? What are 4 things you can touch? 3 things you can hear? 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. By taking the time to focus on those individual senses, it makes it much easier to forget about all the noise that's going on in your head and in your body and in your environment, so that you can come back to your senses and have a conversation. However, if you or someone you know is in a mental health crisis, if you're afraid that someone is going to hurt themselves or others, immediately call 911. I can't stress this enough. We try to fix problems that we need help fixing. However, if you need to talk to someone, there is a new mental health crisis emergency line, 711, or you can call 1-800-273-TALK to talk to someone. If the phone isn't your thing, you can also tweet at 273talk. So I gave you some ideas about techniques that you can take back with you, but you might be interested in knowing some of the things that we're doing at NSA to help our workforce manage stress. And we've put a lot of effort into developing employee assistance and wellness services for that purpose. We have a civilian fitness program that allows people to work out on duty time. We have a mindfulness and meditation program that teaches some of these techniques so that people are armed with their ability to, breathe properly or meditation. They're also great team building exercises. And probably my favorite is our mentoring program. We have a great army of mentors. And this is not just career advice. This is, you're having a bad day, you don't know how to manage an interpersonal conflict or a work conflict, you need somebody to talk to, and sometimes you just need a friend to talk to. We're in a unique environment where sometimes we work on things that we can't talk to friends external to the agency about, or our spouses. It's nice to have a friend who understands our unique environment. And it's not just NSA super secret squirrel stuff. Even in your own organizations, where you might have friends who aren't in cybersecurity, who don't understand why that challenge that you are struggling with matters. Well, it's just a computer. Can't you just turn it on and turn it off again? But most of all, what I like about the mentoring program, and I have personal experience with this, is sometimes you need somebody to remind you that work-life balance is important. And sometimes we think of work-life balance as a selfish thing, but I hope I've helped you realize that work-life balance is important, and it can help you do a better job. It can help your work, because we bring so much into work with us. Helping to manage that balance between our personal lives and work can help us manage our stress better, and then also just be better hackers. So let's summarize things that you can take away with you right now. For individuals and teams, practice mindfulness. There are resources online. They make great team-building exercises. There's also the sensory centering technique. Also, just check in with each other. Be that buddy. If someone's running hot one day, just tell them to take a break, and they need that. For organizations, empower your workforce and consider instilling hope as part of your culture. Value that work-life balance, because not only does it show your employees that you care about them, it has long-term benefits for your organization, because you're empowering them to manage their stress and do better work for you. And my message to the community is be kind and lift each other up. Remember, we're all in this together. Cybersecurity is a team effort. With a whole-of-society approach, we can protect our networks, secure our systems, and look out for each other. We all want to be happy hackers. Happy hackers are better at security. Thank you. So I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions. I often talk about this subject, and the last time I talked about it, I think I had 20 minutes of questions on stage and about an hour and a half of questions off stage. And so, of course, Neil, you are the first question.
I'll defer to someone else if someone. Yeah. Of course, I can talk to you at work too, but
no, please.
I remember the original work that you did on stress in the operators, and I have a vague recollection that you recommended to the organization involves some specific steps.
Yes.
But I don't remember what those were.
So we were really concerned with tactical operations, and by that I mean these are hands-on keyboards. So these weren't necessarily op center, watch center operators, but these were maybe red team, blue team operators where you had set operational op plans, you had specific tools and techniques that you were using, you had to get in and get out because you were on a timeline. What's interesting is that whenever, from a performance perspective, and I'm going to start getting a little sciencey here, I'll try to keep it down. From a performance perspective, we have a hard time realizing how tired we are and when our performance starts to decline. So we think we can run much farther than we actually can before our cognitive abilities start to decline. And so for the operations that we studied, the average op length was 5-ish hours, plus or minus. That's a long time. If you think about an 8-hour workday, and most of that is hands-on keyboard doing things, you're paying attention, you're trying not to make any mistakes. If you make a mistake, you might blow the whole op. That's a lot. And so we had recommended to the organization to watch out for that timeline, because we wanted to make sure that they realized that anything over that amount of time, you start to see cognitive decline, but you also see increases in fatigue and frustration. And we didn't study the operational outcome, but we studied how people felt about the outcome. And what's interesting about that is people often feel like they did worse than they actually did. So an op might be successful, but if it didn't go perfectly as planned, you personally might feel like you failed because you made some type of mistake that could have been avoided. And by helping people manage their own fatigue, because sometimes it takes a moment to come back into yourself to realize how tired you really are, we can lift each other up. We can help each other do better to prevent those mistakes. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Hong Fei. I work for Microsoft Azure. I'm a PM director there. So my question, thank you for to raise this topic and sharing with us. My question is, do you have best practices in measuring the stress level, the healthiness of your workforce, of the ops, and the effectiveness of the methodologies, the practice you do to either help them better or didn't really help? Thanks.
No, that's a great question. So the question was, do we have any methodologies for studying stress? And then have we been able to measure the effects of certain types of mitigations? Yes, so we actually developed a methodology for studying stress. Part of that was because we couldn't find any methodologies that were specific to the type of environment that we were interested in. So we wanted to look at specific activities rather than long-term op center fatigue, which is a different type of fatigue, and we wanted to make sure we're studying the right thing. This survey instrument is called the Cyber Operations Stress Survey. It's something that we have published and is available on nsa.gov, or if you Google any of these terms with my name, it'll probably pop up somewhere. And that's something that we were able to use across multiple studies. So I talked about 4 studies of different NSA locations, and we were able to use that. The other question was, have we been able to measure the effectiveness of some of these techniques? So I personally have not done research in that area. I made recommendations and have been thinking about other types of techniques that we can integrate and introduce into our environment. I do have a colleague who's been working on mindfulness, and he's the one who told me about the scientific underpinnings of mindfulness and the cognitive benefits, not just the mental health benefits of mindfulness meditation techniques. So there is science behind that. I mentioned hope and got a little wishy-washy on hope as a psych construct. There is a lot of work on hope from the scientific perspective and its effect on organizations and individuals as well. And so those are different types of research studies that you could look up. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So Molly from Raytheon. My question is, did your research show differences between teams that were localized in one place or perhaps remote and more, I can't think of the right word, but separate from one another? Yes.
So all of the operators that we studied were local to each other. They tend to work in small teams and not remotely. So I don't really have an answer to that question. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. We are handing out some of these boxes if you would like to take one home with you. Take a couple home for your team. And I believe the slides will be available online if you wanted to reference any of the figures that I mentioned today. So thank you.